Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our third BC Consensus on Brain Injury, Mental Health, and Addiction. So happy to have you all in the room. And Minister Whiteside is here, so everybody calms down when everybody's supposed to be where they're supposed to be. So thank you. Before I introduce Dr. Haig, I do have to make an announcement, which is very sad, but our team in Haida Gwaii have had to step away for the day. They reached out yesterday and they had a toxic drug crisis event in their community, and one young man has died, several youth are in hospital, but every one of our team members there that were joining us today are either related to or connected to those families. So they've stepped down, and we send them so much love and support. We'll connect with them in the future, but this is an ongoing challenge in our province, but particularly in our remote areas. So I have asked Dr. Haig to come forward and do our land acknowledgement, and she will offer us some words of support and love that we can virtually send out to Haida Gwaii. Dr. Haig.
Really tough. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Emily Haig. I am Thessalon First Nation from the Anishinaabe community in Northern Ontario on my mom's side, and my father's has an English Scottish background. I'm currently at the University of Victoria and serve in the role as the Chief Mungo Martin Research Chair in Indigenous Mental Health. So, personally and professionally, this type of news is really devastating. And I think I'm in a room of like-minded individuals who share that hurt and pain that this type of news brings. And I was asked to give this land acknowledgement, and I think one of the best ways that I can acknowledge the Lekwungen and the Wasanich peoples is to acknowledge this pain and loss, and to really emphasize that when communities go through painful times, when they lose members, particularly young people, it is devastating. It's absolutely devastating. And I know that many of us in this room can relate to that and have had their own personal connections to these types of losses and challenges. But when we think about an Indigenous community up in Haida Gwaii and this loss, and Janelle speaks about how it touches everybody, it's this community orientation, and it really reflects an Indigenous way of being in the world, with this emphasis on relationships and connections. When you think about others being your relatives, plants, the land, the water, they're your relatives. When you think about others as your relatives, you treat them differently and you feel differently. And you feel those losses. You walk alongside each other. And I think we can all learn from that and take lessons from that. So I trust that we'll all be holding this community in our heart and our mind today. And this loss really brings into sharp focus what we're doing today, and how the impacts of this drug crisis, they don't discriminate. They're far-reaching. They're happening to us on this campus. They're happening to us in this city. They're happening to us in areas that we might consider remote and far away, like Haida Gwaii. And I think that highlights the need for our solutions, that they can't just focus on the context that we're familiar with, that we really have to stretch ourselves. And I know this gathering is about stretching and coming up to consensus around the intersections between brain injury, substance use, mental health. And I'm going to challenge us to kind of stretch ourselves even further and add that other layer of other communities that we're not as familiar with, that aren't necessarily or always represented in kind of places of power like we're at today, and make sure that our solutions include, are relevant, are helpful to communities like Indigenous communities. And, I had prepared, when I do these land acknowledgements, it's always important to me that I put some thought into why I'm here and what the purpose of the meeting is, and to provide some greater context rather than just sort of a performative, like, we're gathered here on this territory. And I had prepared a very different land acknowledgement that was really highlighting the resurgence and resilience of Indigenous people, particularly since tomorrow is National Indigenous Peoples Day. It's often a time of great celebration. The summer solstice is a time of often of ceremony and coming together and feasting. And so I do want to end with somewhat of a balanced message that, while we understand that these events have perhaps a disproportionate impact on marginalized communities and Indigenous communities, we can also look to these communities for solutions, that they have great experience in taking care of each other. They have great experience of the importance of relationships, and how to approach very complex matters in holistic ways. And so I offer that as a piece that to keep in mind and to look to and to work towards including in the work, especially when we're working on a national strategy, that there may be lessons to learn and opportunities to make our work better for all of us by including Indigenous voices and perspectives. So really appreciate the good work you're about to embark on today. I look forward to following all the progress. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Haig, for those beautiful welcoming words and the reflections upon the events. I feel very moved, very grounded, and it's a great invitation to our campus and to the event. And to continue, I'm going to introduce, my name is Mauricio Garcia Barrera. I will talk a little bit more about me in a moment, but it is my great pleasure to introduce us with the Provost of the University of Victoria, Dr. Elizabeth Croft, who is going to give us a welcoming words to the campus.
Thank you so much, Mauricio, and thank you, Emily, for those grounding words that are already helping us to understand and reflect and hopefully move as we go forward to healing. And I do want to say thank you and welcome to everyone for joining us today here this beautiful day when the sun shines, and remind us that there is hope and happiness in this world, even in the midst of great pain. It is wonderful to see so many colleagues and project participants here on campus. I will say to our colleagues and partners in Haida Gwaii, our heart reaches out to you, and we hold you in our hearts right now. I also want to thank our friends and colleagues who are on Zoom from Prince George, Nanaimo, and Vancouver, and a special and warmest welcome to project participants with lived experience of brain injury, mental health, and addictions. We are grateful for your amazing contributions and for taking your time out of your schedules to gather with us here in person and online. And on behalf of the University of Victoria, I'm honored to welcome all of you to this event, which is an outstanding community-engaged research project that all here and online, have played an important role in advancing over the past 3 years. This would not happen without you, without all of your contributions. And I absolutely know that there's so much more good work to come at this event and going forward. I understand that there is data collection going on all day, an amazing keynote speaker, and great conversations through panel and table discussions that are planned for you. I'm sure this will be a meaningful and fulfilling and catalyzing event that brings forward more good work. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank the Ministry of Mental Health and Addictions and the Vancouver Foundation for funding this important research project. This is the final year of this 3-year project with a focus on insecure housing and homelessness. For over 60 years, UVic has been committed to providing a supporting teaching and learning environment and to partnering with communities and organizations such as these to make impact in our homes locally and globally, to pursue research that matters. This project is just such a prime example of collaboration across sectors towards a better, more resilient, and a more compassionate future, mobilizing innovation, scholarship, to address the needs of individuals and communities. We start with our heads and we work through our hearts here, which is so wonderful. And already this project has a positive impact on individuals, families, and communities through best practice and policy. Again, I am excited by the outcomes that are here to improve quality of life and outcomes for those who are living with brain injury, mental health, and addiction challenges through the education, training, and best practices for frontline workers, service providers, healthcare professionals, and clinicians. I understand that your contributions have been pivotal to informing the proposed Bill C-277, an act to establish a national strategy on brain injuries, as well as pave the way for future partner projects and funding opportunities. This is hard work, challenging work, sometimes painful work, but it is such good work. It is urgent work that has the power to transform lives and livelihoods and contribute to a better future together. And it gives me great hope. I am pleased now to introduce the Honorable Jennifer Whiteside, MLA for New Westminster and the BC Minister of Mental Health and Addictions. Minister Whiteside has championed a wide range of social justice issues, from accessible post-secondary education and affordable public childcare to Medicare and health equity. She has worked for community organizations and labor unions at the provincial and national levels, and she has dedicated her career to advocating for working people. Please join me in providing the warmest welcome to the Honorable Jennifer Whiteside to provide remarks. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Elizabeth, so much for that, for your words and that warm welcome. And thank you, Dr. Haig, for the acknowledgement and for starting us off in a good way. I have to say, my heart really hurts. It's an honor and a pleasure, as always, to be able to join together on the traditional territory of the Lekwungen-speaking people of the Saanich, of the Esquimalt and Songhees First Nations, as well as the Saanich people. Obviously, the news from Haida Gwaii I had just heard when it was announced this morning is not something that has made it to my office yet, but we'll be working to reach out to the community in Haida Gwaii and working with the Health Authority and the First Nations Health Authority to provide and offer support. But it is a sobering reminder, coming on the heels of a state of emergency that was declared on the North Island recently. Coming on the heels of that, a state of emergency also identified by the Tsilhqot'in Nations in the interior, about the disproportionate impact, really, of everything on Indigenous peoples in our province and our country, but in particular of the impact of the toxic drug crisis, and the way in which it not only in those communities particularly disproportionately impacts Indigenous people, but young people. And the thing about community is that, community can truly save lives, and we know that culture can save lives in this work. But in Indigenous communities, as you've heard, the relationships are so close that the impact is magnified. And so I'm very, I send all of my good wishes and my condolences to the experiences that that community is going through today. That is devastating news. I've had a chance to meet with folks from the Brain Consensus group, as well as the CRIDGE Society over the course of my time in this ministry, and I have to say it's been very eye-opening, inspiring, and impactful to have a chance to have a look into the really critically important work that you are all doing. And so I'm really pleased to have a chance to be here with you today as we mark June as Brain Injury Awareness Month. I'm very grateful to the work that folks at UVic and UBC are doing to not only organizing this event, but supporting the critical research work, and not just academic research, but research in what I think is the best form of research, which is really working with community. And so in that respect, I'm particularly grateful for the involvement of people who are bringing their own lived experience to your deliberations and to your work. That is so critically important. I have learned in this work that there is the sort of the nothing about us without us principle, which is something that in my career prior to politics, which was in labor, in working and supporting and advocating for healthcare workers, I mean, has always been something that has been really a core principle, but really it is a principle that has to infuse all of our work, particularly when we are talking about people who are either vulnerable to begin with, or who are made vulnerable through their experience with traumatic brain injury. It is, I recall being very surprised, particularly by that really, that really impactful way that the comparison came up between the NHL player who experiences a concussion and that number on one side, and on this side, 5,500 women impacted by traumatic brain injury resulting from intimate partner violence. That is quite an impactful way to display what is happening in our communities, and the way in which those impacts are very obscured by all kinds of barriers in terms of how we look at vulnerable populations. The research that indicates that up to 92% of women survivors of intimate partner violence experience some form of brain injury is really a call to action. And that call is being met by many of you who are doing this work, and I'm pleased that we are able to that we're able to support through some of the initiatives that our government is engaged in, which we'll talk about in a moment. You all know as well that when it comes to the toxic drug crisis, anoxic brain injuries are on the rise, and that the long-term effects of repeated overdose can often lead to acquired brain injury. And we have now a real shift in how the toxic drug crisis is playing out, and we have a fundamentally different toxic drug crisis with synthetic opioids than we had previously with organic opioids. And the impact of fentanyl in particular and fentanyl analogs is, contributing to the development of a growing population that, where we sort of see this overlay on pre-existing cycles of poverty and homelessness and evictions and incarceration that is very, very difficult to break. But you layer over the impact of the toxic drug crisis in its current form, and that just makes the problem that much more wicked. And one thing, I've also really learned is that it's important to have some hope in this field. And one of the ways in which I hang on to some of the positive outcomes that we do see, and that I know that you see in your clinical work and in your circles, is that I keep in my, I have a binder that when we're in session in Victoria is all my answers to everything. The answers to everything are in this binder. And in this binder, I keep a piece of art that I bought from a woman who lived in the downtown east side and had a serious heroin addiction, which turned into a fentanyl addiction, and took her many, many tries and a long time and a lot of support to find her way out of that. But she did, and she produces the most beautiful art. And that's just one example, because I see people coming through, having come through incredible adversity everywhere I've been in the province. I've seen some people, as you have, in some of the darkest places in our province, and hope that they find that path and that we can build that path for them to find their way out. But I think it's important that we know that people recover, people find a care pathway. It's our job to do everything in our power that we can to build those pathways for people and to support them and their families. These situations, these impacts, however one arrives at having a life with brain injury, has an impact not just on the individual, but on their whole circle, their family, their circle, their community, the whole broader community. And as they deal with the incredible challenges that they are grappling with around trauma, around mental health issues, around maybe addictions and unstable housing often, all of these intersections require that we come together in ways that are sometimes difficult in government to work across government in ways that we need to. But it's why I'm so particularly grateful today that our colleagues from BC Housing are here, and that they are really an integrated part of this work, and that you're focusing on the issue of housing, because that is certainly key. I would say I hear as much about housing in the work that I do as I do about the health side of things. They are absolutely linked. We cannot support people to have decent lives if we don't have decent, stable environments for them to live in. And so I'm very interested in the outcome of your deliberations and the kind of collection of all of your expertise and all of your advice. That will be very important for us to hear. I mean, for our part in government, there are two things that are really critical. I mean, one is that we are working to build out a system of access for people who require care that is low barrier, that provides sort of a single door, that doesn't require people to jump through hoops, that really takes care and points of care out to where people are. Doesn't require them to come into a system that in many cases maybe wasn't built for them, isn't accessible to them, isn't navigable for them. We're working in ways that are trying to, in which we are trying to recognize that not everybody is going to walk through the door in the same way. So one of the things that we've developed is complex care housing, which is a model of housing that again goes to where people are at, works to keep people who are either precariously housed, who are at risk of being homeless, or who have been homeless, and provide wraparound supports for them in their housing, so that we can try to keep them there and keep them stable. And the initial outcome of that and evidence of that is that it is working, that we are doing what we need to be doing to support people in that way. So that is our first phase of that was 240 units. We have vastly expanded that program, and we are now working with municipalities and with BC Housing and the health system on purpose-built complex care housing. And importantly, we're working to train up the healthcare workers, the community mental health workers, who are a really key part of supporting people in those living environments. We also are really proud to support the work of the Brain Injury Alliance, and have been really grateful to be able to support and partner on the work that you've been doing over the last 3 years, including direct funding to the Constable Gerald Breeze Centre for Traumatic Life Loss to support the ongoing research that's so needed into brain injury, mental health, and addictions, and to provide to us the evidence-based solutions and services that we need to be able to incorporate, so that we're building out that system of care that is integrated, that's culturally safe, that's accessible. And your work on the intimate partner violence piece has very much influenced government's gender-based violence action plan, which is a sort of a living, breathing plan that will have many more years of actions and funding attached to it to carry on this work, including important supports for providing training for staff in shelters and in transitional housing around how to recognize signs of traumatic brain injury and how to respond to it, how to support a person in that situation access the care that they need. And finally, of course, we just last week, which I read in the paper, the great news that UBC is receiving a grant, a $3.4 million grant to lead to a community-based project aimed at improving the diagnosis of brain injury in survivors of intimate partner violence, and that will also provide really helpful recommendations, information and recommendations to us. You know, there's no question that there is much more that we need to be doing, and we are painfully reminded of that every day. But one of the steps that we've taken is to engage Dr. Vigo to provide advice to government with respect to how we can support the services and care pathways for individuals who are very acutely ill, who are experiencing concurrent disorders, mental health issues, addiction issues, the intersection of those, and traumatic brain injury as a result of repeated overdose. And this, unfortunately, is a growing population. One thing that we know is that we are working very hard on every pillar of our response to the toxic drug crisis. Certainly, we are working on enforcement. And I have, you know, I mean, I see the news as you do about the work that law enforcement is doing to engage with, you know, to work to take on the impact of organized crime. But I just read a piece in the Washington Post today about, you know, about precursor chemicals coming in, you know, internationally. And I will just say that it is a very challenging problem. It is a very challenging problem that we are not only dealing with in this province, we are dealing with this across the country and across the continent. And it will require continued effort at the federal level, at all levels of government, to work on both on an international level, on a continental level, and on a local level, to address the issue of the really pernicious way in which now the toxic drug supply is produced and distributed. It is a game changer when somebody can cook it up in their bathtub and they don't need an organic component to it. That is, we're in a very different territory now. And one of the ways, so there's much work happening with law enforcement and you know, with the federal government on those questions. But in the meantime, as we do that, of course, we have to address the impacts of that in our communities and on the ground. And it's why the work that you're doing is so critically important. It's why the work that Dr. Vigo is engaged in is so critical, because we have to be trying to skate to where the puck is going to be, because where things are right now is not a situation that anybody feels comfortable with. I mean, we don't like to feel helpless in the face of the devastation that the toxic drug crisis leaves in its wake. And so all of the work that we are doing to build out treatment supports for individuals, we have had an unprecedented investment in mental health and addictions care in the last few budgets. We have never seen the amount of coordination and integration in our healthcare system. And I just want to take a moment to express my gratitude to the folks at Providence Healthcare and at St. Paul's Hospital who are building out the Road to Recovery, which is really the first, and I would argue probably the first in Canada, approach to integrating mental health and addictions care really into our healthcare system. And we are getting waits for detox at St. Paul's down to a matter of days now. And we are now doing in Vancouver through Access Central same-day clinical assessments and triaging people out to outpatient care at times or connecting them to other supports. We have just confirmed our investment of over $150 million across the province so that all health authorities in every region of the province will start to scale up a single point of access and start to do that work of pulling together all of the many resources that are there but that don't speak to each other or that are not connected. And that is system transformation on that side of things, very much related to the work that you're doing, because many of the people that you care for are going to find themselves in that system one place or the other. And what we don't want people to be doing is having to go through having to figure out on their own, what are the multiple doors? Which door do I need to go through? Where do I need to go through to get help? We want to reduce those barriers. We want people to have one point of access. We want to be the ones in the system that step up and provide that pathway, make that pathway available to people, not make them have to navigate it on their own. It's what people need. That is how we build a system that is compassionate, that is empathetic, that is caring, that goes to where people are at. And your contribution to all of that work is absolutely critical. So thank you for everything that you've been doing, everything you're going to do today, everything you're going to do in the future to help us move down this path, which is really just about how do we best take care of everybody? How do we take care of people in our communities and our society? That's really the fundamental question here. And so your deliberations are going to provide very important research and policy advice to government as we continue to grapple with some of these really, really difficult questions. And it provides so much hope to know that such an incredible collection of people are looking at this question in the way that you do, and that we have families and people with lived and living experience alongside all of these conversations, providing their input as well. So thank you for everything you're going to do today. I really look forward to hearing about the outcome of it, and I hope you have a really wonderful conference. Thank you.
Good morning again. Thank you. And thank you, Minister Whiteside, for your comments. And I know that Haida Gwaii is going to be on everybody's hearts. And I appreciate the emotion Minister Whiteside felt, because that's exactly what happened to me when I was doing my notes yesterday. So I'm kind of winging it today because I just couldn't get beyond their heartbreak of what they were going through. So this is our third year. And Minister Whiteside, you're our third minister, and I hope that's not indicative of how difficult we've been. But it's just the way it works. But I do want to say that we are in our third year. We've committed from the beginning. The first phone call or Zoom call I had with Minister Malcolmson was on July 21st, 2021. And I asked, would she entertain a proposal for a conference for one day? She said she would. Within 5 days, I met with Mauricio on July 26th at the Union Pacific Coffee Shop. I didn't really know Mauricio. We had been on a panel together, but I knew that he had done research on concussion in sports, and he would know about the consensus statement on concussion in sports, and I didn't understand why we didn't have one on brain injury. So I met with Mauricio, and I really felt like he would talk me off the ledge and tell me how daunting this would be. He did say that that consensus statement took 6 years, and I said, nope, not happening. We can't wait that long. But he said that he described me as a helicopter pilot, and that I was, over the trees and going to pull everybody in. So he totally embraced the idea and quickly helped me pull together this team. And we've been meeting ever since, but we had our first event in October 2022, the second one in June 2023, and this is our third one. So we were just under our 3-year commitment to have these pieces done. The writing begins after today, and we're very excited that mostly that we've been able to stay committed to our value and belief that we could have action come out of everyone and that we would help that grow and move things forward. So I will be sharing about Bill C-277 because that's been an important piece that I've been working on since 2017, but everything I've been doing has carried that theme through, and all of you who have been part of this have supported that idea. You have met the team. I do want to acknowledge Jason in the back and his team who are broadcasting for us today. Okay. Sorry. Carolyn is over here. She's our Zoom coordinator. And we do have Nanaimo, Kelowna, and Terrace online with people. And as you know, Haida Gwaii couldn't be part of the conversation today. They were last year. We gained so much knowledge from Haida Gwaii last year, and they gained knowledge from us. And so one of the things that they said to me after, could you come here? Could you come and give us some education and training on our frontline people? So, you know, Minister Whiteside, I'll put that out there to you. That education, prevention, and awareness is huge and it's needed. I'm also going to make a statement that I talked about last night, that I don't feel this should just fall on the shoulders of the Ministry of Mental Health and Addiction or the Ministry of Health. This is more than health. And I will ask you, because I will ask you again, to help us champion it, that the ministry that's responsible for liquor and cannabis sales should be investing some money into our prevention and awareness. And I would love to have that happen. I know you're doing the best you can with what you've got, but it's more than your ministry, and we're so grateful that you've opened the door to us to have these conversations. So thank you. I do want to just, this slide, bring this up because all along we've called this brain injury, mental health, and addiction, the intersections, and we've kind of, over the time, it talks about substance use, and we pull to that more. And I thought, did I get it wrong when I proposed the idea? But I do want to bring this up to people because it is more than substances. That when anybody engages in an activity, a behavior that controls their life, takes over, and prevents them from engaging in a healthy way, the way that they want to, that this can be problematic. So I do want you in your conversations today to consider that behavioral addictions can be as devastating to an individual and as difficult for a family to cope with. They're real. I'm classic number 7, the workaholic, and that's okay. I get a lot done, but I also know that that is an addiction and it's a trauma response from what I've been through, losing 2 husbands, a son-in-law, and all the brain injury that's been in my life. That is a trauma response. I have to manage that for myself, and I'm not saying that for anything other than to bring awareness that these can be problematic and people need to be aware of what's happening in their life. So please consider these issues and challenges that people are facing as well in your conversations today. So as you know, we developed this as a 3-year project. It will be ongoing. We do need to secure more funding to complete more research. Part of that will come into the prevention, awareness, education piece that we need to get throughout the province. But we are committed, and we're committed to begin drafting the first consensus statement. And we know that will be a living, breathing document. It will have to change over time. But all of us, Minister Whiteside, my MP, my MLA, everyone here and online and has participated can applaud yourselves that BC is leading the country in this. We are leading the country. And I'm so proud of all of you for trusting us to make this happen. So again, just acknowledging our team, but also at our tables, we have students who are moderating and scribing and team leads that are helping us out. So thank you to all of them. You'll meet them at your own table, but please give them thanks. We also have Tori in the room here as a clinical counselor. Should anybody need some support, you'll have a number you can text and we'll get her to connect with you. Online, we have Amanda, who is a clinical counselor, and she's offering support to people on Zoom. So please do not be afraid to access that help because they are here to help you. And as I mentioned, Carolyn, but these are also our partners, and we're so grateful to have the remote locations because all along I've been vocal about Victoria cannot tell Prince George what's best for them, and Prince George can't tell Haida Gwaii what's best. We need people at the table, and we need a framework that people can then take to their own communities and adapt to the challenges that they're facing. And just as Dr. Croft said, thank you so much to the Ministry of Mental Health and Addiction and to Vancouver Foundation for believing in this project. It's been life-changing for me. Certainly, I feel like it saved my life because of the tragedies that I was going through at the time, but it's been life-changing for me, career-changing for our researchers, and also in terms of our counselors. I don't practice as a counselor anymore, but I do take practicum students because I love to be able to educate them about brain injury. So it's been life-changing for everyone, and I definitely thank you, Minister Whiteside and Minister Malcolmson and Minister Darcy, who actually started way back at the Heads Together think tank with me to believe in what we were doing. So thank you. And I will say now, Bill C-277, most exciting project that we've been working on. But Dr. Matei has supported this as many people are coming on board. Mayor Alto, as you heard last night, people that were there, she was the first municipality to sign on and support Bill C-277. As I said, this is something I've been working on since 2017 with my MP, Alistair McGregor, whose portfolio is primarily agriculture. And when I started to meet with Alistair to educate him on brain injury, he admittedly said he knew very little about it. But it was in 2018 that I formally was in Ottawa presenting at Brain Injury Canada's conference. I met with him at his office and said, would you please put forward a private member's bill? What I was looking at was Todd Doherty had put through a private member's bill on PTSD. And I was like, how come we don't have this on brain injury? So Alistair said he would research it, and we've been working steadily ever since. It was an emerging theme in the Heads Together think tank, came forward to the recommendations that we started with here, is carried forward really strongly. And anyone who was here last year will remember me reading Alistair's remarks and him saying, we're looking forward to hosting Janelle in Ottawa. I had not been invited. I had only threatened I was going. So he kind of called me out on that, but we ended up with 23 delegates who did go to Ottawa in October. And it was a game changer for the MPs that were involved and for all of us to be able to speak with them, to host a reception, be in the question and answer period, and to see what we could do to carry this forward. There we go. So I'm going to let Alistair speak at this part, and then I'll finish up.
Hi, everyone. I'm Alistair McGregor, the Member of Parliament for Cowichan Malahat Langford, and I'm also the sponsor of Bill C-277, which seeks to set up a national strategy on brain injuries. Last week, on June the 12th, we had an incredible development on this bill's journey through the House of Commons, when it received a unanimous vote, 324 to 0 at second reading, which means that bill is now going off to the Standing Committee on Health. It's great that this vote happened before the House rises today, before the summer, because that means that we're going to spend the summer months getting ready for committee. And it's going to be a great thing, but I really want to emphasize that this bill would not have achieved this level of success if it weren't for the campaign that has been mounted by people with lived experience, by researchers, and by important stakeholders. So thank you for all the work that you've done. Thank you for reaching out to MPs from all parties to make this moment happen, because we could not have done it without you. So we're looking forward to getting ready for committee. We're looking forward to having witnesses appear to speak about why this bill is so important, to receiving those briefs. And let's get our sleeves rolled up, get the work done, so we can have the committee report the bill back to the House of Commons and make sure that it gets off to the Senate in short order. I appreciate all of your work, all of your advocacy, and once again, thank you.
So what Alistair is talking about, the campaign that was launched. After our final day in Ottawa, we met with him to strategize what more can we do to push this forward. And he said, you need to mobilize people across the country. That is something I can do. I love to host people. I love to talk to people. And so on my flight back with my grandson, who spoke so eloquently at the reception, I came up with this idea of 125 days to say yes, which riffed off my Canada 150 project, where I posted 150 photos for 150 days of survivors and family members. The 125 days coincides with the 125 days that the House of Commons is sitting in Ottawa this year from January 29th to December 17th. And I said, I can mobilize people. And so on every day of those 125 days, I send out 75 emails and printed letters, 38 printed letters go to House of Commons. Minister Dix is receiving them. My MLA is receiving them. But it has a photo, just like Barb Butler, there, a photo of a person who with lived or living experience or a family member, and a link to a video talking about their experience and why they want to see Bill C-277 to come forward. And I'm working hard to bring all levels of government into this because every level of government is trying to address these challenges. And so it's been very exciting to have people come forward. Now, that campaign absolutely pushed our MPs into voting unanimously. And to hear them speak at the debate, the first hour and the second hour, MPs stood up using names of people that are in the campaign, in their ridings, and who have personally walked in to give letters to them. So hats off to all of them, and I'm so grateful that it's moving forward. So really what that means, though, is we are only up one side of the mountain. I'm thrilled. This is 35 years of work for me. I'm thrilled, but we're only at one side of the mountain. Now I'm going to climb the other side and get that flag at the top as fast as I can, which means that this summer, we will be looking to have 500 submissions go to the Health Committee before they convene in September. And those can come from organizations, from politicians, from community stakeholders, and for sure people with lived and living experience to say why this is needed. So we want to flood the committee with this information. I will be continuing with the campaign until December. They're on a break right now. However, as of tomorrow, this is the first 69 people that are part of the campaign, and as of tomorrow I will have emailed over 5,000 emails and over 2,500 letters have been mailed from my little home office at home. So these are the heroes. It's not all of us who are behind this, but these are the heroes who walk this path and show me every day why what we started or what I thought was important is important, and I'm grateful to all of them. So a round of applause to, and some of our survivors are here today. So it is my great pleasure to introduce and turn this over to my good friend, Dr. Mauricio Garcia Barrera, who is responsible for making me the maniac I am and not telling me you shouldn't do this.
Thank you so much for all those introductory words from Minister Whiteside, from my colleague Emily Haig, from Janelle. You can see there is a whole story behind this project. It has been 3 years. And as Janelle said, it changed her life. It also changed mine, because I used to work very experimental with some small clinical populations around sports psychology, sports neuropsychology. And this opportunity to work with Janelle in this team has really opened my eyes to look into community, to learn together. So just very briefly, I'm going to kind of like showcase where we are at with this project. At the end of today's conference, I'm going to discuss a little bit the early outcomes of the 3 years of work. We already have some very positive outcomes. I'm going to hold back on those outcomes to the end, mostly because I don't want to bias, to affect or influence the conversations of today, because this is, after all, research that we're all doing together. So in year one, as was mentioned, in October 14, 2022, we met in this very room. We have about over 106 people participating, and we have amazing conversations with the focus that year on surviving the brain injury associated with a drug poisoning event with overdose. So we have great conversations on Zoom, in the room, and the outcome of that is reported in our website. It's the first report of year one. In year two, and this very room as well, this was last year in June 22nd, 2023, we have the same conversation, a little larger group. Now we have 146 participants, and all of you that were here in the room and in Zoom help us to better understand barriers, challenges, and opportunities associated with working against the difficulties in accessing services, especially for those that are surviving intimate partner violence. So it was a very revealing conversation, one of its kind across the nation. We learned a lot. We get a lot of awareness. Minister Whiteside mentioned some of those numbers of how prevalent these kinds of very unwitnessed, hidden, and very silent head injuries are occurring. So we concluded that year with great learnings. Now we are here. Today is the 20th of June. We're celebrating June, the Brain Injury Awareness Month. This is also the month of diversity. As you know, it's Pride Month, and we represent so many diversities in this room of all kinds, so it's very pointed that this meeting is happening this month. And today is the first day of summer. It's solstice. So it's like hopefully shining a light in all of this learning. And I was told early today that we have over 160 participants. So that number keeps going up, which is really, really good. Thank you for everyone as well that is in Zoom. So one of the things that we really wanted to look at in this short conversation with me is the expected outcomes. And I will compare these to what we are actually now achieving. Some of those outcomes have been mentioned. So one of the early goals in setting up this 3-year program of research was to facilitate the identification of main themes associated with the intersections of brain injury, mental health, and addictions in our community. One of those main themes already emerged so clearly to us and to everyone that spoke before me today, that is the issue of housing, how important housing is. And hence, the topic of this 3rd year is on housing and homelessness, insecure housing. That was a change. For those that remember the initial plan, initially year 3 was going to be focused in sports concussion, because that's the world I come from, and because 3 years ago, we needed still a lot of campaigns around identification, recognition, awareness of sports concussions. But that has changed. There has been a lot of investment in that area, and now we really need to move into this new topic. The second goal, expected outcome, was the articulation of a research mandate built in collaboration between stakeholders, all the community partners, and the researchers. This is pivotal to what signified a lot to me. And it is that I grew up kind of like in a tradition of academia in which we sit in our labs and our offices, we look at papers and computers, we have these magnificent, very bright students in a group, and we come up with very interesting ideas to research on. We apply for a grant, the following year we get it if we're lucky, and then we start doing our research. But this was a completely different approach. And it is, I don't really know how brain injury looks to each one and all of you. I don't know. And I cannot pretend that I do. I cannot make those decisions in a lab, in an office. I need to hear those voices. So this articulation of this mandate is coming from exactly that conversation. It's what do we need to do as researchers? And at the end of today, I will show you what are the priorities that you and all the work that has been co-chaired in this room have pointed at. We also hope to increase public awareness of these intersections, as well as creating campaigns for education and training opportunities. We have started. I will share at the end of the day some of the outcomes of that, but you can see even in the words of Minister Whiteside and others, the provost, that the language that we're using, the learnings that we're using are starting to be heard, are starting to be socialized out there, which is really positive. After today, we're going to put all our heads into looking at the 3 years of data and development, and we're going to work on the development of a consensus statement on these community priorities. So this will be the synthesis of the 3 years learnings, what is common, and what we need to do as an action. And then we'll generate from that a statement also for government, creating recommendation, clinical guidelines. And what we have learned from these conversations is that they have to be sensitive to the diversity that embraces brain injury community, and including cultural sensitivities. They have to be trauma-oriented, trauma-based, and also very sensitive to indigenous issues. So we're going to work. That's going to be a big, big work. So all the time that we have spent programming and articulating these meetings is going to be now invested in the writing, reflecting, really coming up with the insights to inform the public. So we have mostly achieved goals in these 3 areas. Now, to wrap up, year 3 is focused on housing. Why housing? Housing that is secure, stable, adequate is a priority for best care practice. Housing security is linked to a sense of control, predictability, comfort. I take it for granted. I have never had to face the issue of like, where am I going to sleep tonight? So it's an amazing privilege, and I never reflected on that until I started looking into this research. And it's so important that housing is a social determinant of mental health. Those that are securely housed, comfortably housed, are usually having better outcomes, even if they're dealing with mental health issues. So it's a very important mandate for us. A secure house, a secure home, serves as a springboard to get other needs met. It serves as an engagement connection place. Having an address builds a sense of belonging and helps building self-determination. I heard some of those words in an interview in CBC. Somebody was speaking about the importance of housing and dealing with these issues as a community. And I really believe on those words and resonated with me. You know, this self-determination, knowing that you have a place that you can call your home, your own. So this is going to be a big part of the reflections, and especially in the context of brain injury and those intersections with mental health and addictions that make very precarious the ability to secure a home long-term, a comfortable place to live. So I will wrap up there. I could speak for an hour. For those that know me, I'm a talker. I'm very moved by the conversations that we had yesterday. As well, in the evening, we were very privileged to see a preview of a movie filmed about the history of Heather and Little Feet, a film that has absolutely moved me because I used to dance myself as well. So we'll when it's possible, maybe we'll socialize a little bit more about the film through our websites and places. But something that I really wanted to reflect upon in yesterday's conversations to wrap up is this idea that one of the major issues that happen when we deal with brain injury is this change on identity, is this having to deal with a loss, a significant grief, a significant loss of oneself, of the one that we used to be. And we are hearing more and more of this resiliency and these amazing examples of those that come around and find a new me, a new oneself, through building community, through support, through caregivers, through parents, through brain injury association services, and so forth. But we're also hearing about those that are continuing to struggle, finding their one new self. So a big part of this conversation is hopefully for us to get inspired to build pathways to help them to find that route to the new oneselves. So thank you so much for being here, and I will pass the word to our very amazing Sheila, who is going to walk us through the day agenda. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody, and thanks for your patience. What I've learned as I've done this over the years is that I have to embrace imperfection, and it happens through the day. So thank you for indulging, and thank you for your help in getting us straightened out. What are we going to do today for the rest of the day? Shortly, we will be moving into our panel discussion, which brings together perspectives across a number of different areas, those with lived experience, policymakers, caregivers, to share their reflections and perspectives on how housing impacts those intersections between addictions, brain injury, and mental health. So we'll be doing that. We'll have a short break before we move into your first session of table discussion, exploring the things that are working well, not working so well, and could be changed within our healthcare system for brain injury supports, with a particular emphasis on housing this year. We'll have lunch. Our agenda today is, as always, we have such little time with you and so many things we want to do. We have the privilege of having Dr. Vigo with us today, and we'd like to introduce him at lunch. So we're going to indulge a little bit in using up your lunchtime, just a small bit. We will start promptly at 1 o'clock. So if you haven't quite finished your lunch, we'll invite you to continue to enjoy it as we move on with the day. We are privileged to have a speaker from UBC, Jacob Stubbs, to talk to us about his work on brain injury and housing instability. And following that, we will review some of your thoughts about what further research would really help this work. And finally, we do some of those closing things, and we will be out of here by about 4 o'clock. Through the day, my job is to keep you happy and comfortable, so please let me know if there is anything you need. I have little or no control over the temperature of this room. We tried it last year. It was freezing in the morning, and they couldn't change that, and then it may get warm in the afternoon. So we'll try to see how we do with that. hopefully all dressed in layers this year. One thing we will be doing is using an online tool, as we did last year if some of you were here, to have some of your participation real time. As we go through our panel, you may have some questions and answers you'd like to ask. So I'm going to invite you right now to log into our tool, Mentimeter. You will find this information on your tables as well. If you would like, you can access Mentimeter by scanning the QR code, or you can open your browser and go to www.menti.com and enter the numbers that you see here on the screen, 13429432. There is no space in between, even though it looks like it on here. If any of you are having trouble getting into the Wi-Fi network, the Wi-Fi information is on the top of the screen right now. If you were here, it's one over here too, if you can't see it. If you were here last year and you're having trouble accessing the network, you have to first forget the UVic network and then start again from scratch. So I'll just give you a moment to get yourself set. If at your table you need any assistance, your scribe or your moderator at your table can help you through the day, or your colleagues at your table. So once you're in, you should see the first screen that shows instructions. If you hit next, you will move on to a little test. We thought we'd just do a quick little test of using Menti by asking you all to share what you would rate your level of knowledge about housing and homelessness as it relates to brain injury, mental health, and addictions is right now. And as you can see, people are already answering. Oops. Why is that not on the screen? So my Menti is not showing on the screen? Well, we'll come back to it. Thank you. I hope everyone has gotten in. Okay. So let's move quickly on to our panel. So we are privileged today to have, again, Cole Kennedy to moderate our panel. You've met Cole before, some of you. Cole's a PhD student in clinical neuropsychology within the Department of Psychology at UVic. He's a senior student senator, a member of the Cortex Lab, a student affiliate of the Institute on Aging and Lifelong Health, and is a graduate student research lead for the BC Consensus on Brain Injury project. He's inspired by his clinical experiences supporting survivors in the community. Cole's research aims to better the lives of those living at the intersections of brain injury, mental health, and addictions in BC and abroad. We also are fortunate to have a number of panelists with us today, who I will invite those who are in the room to come and join us on stage. We have Wendy Horvind, who is joining us with lived experience, Heidi Hartman from BC Housing, and Linda Sankey from the South Okanagan-Similkameen Brain Injury Society. We also have Connie Paul joining us from Nanaimo, and she is a member of the Sunemo Hulit Lilam Health Center. So she will be joining us and will be up on the screen shortly, I am hoping. So please come and join us on stage. I'll turn things over to you, Cole.
Good morning, everyone.
Great.
Morning.
Thank you, Sheila, for that lovely introduction. Hello, everyone. As you heard, my name is Cole. I have the distinct pleasure of being panel moderator again this year. I said yes the first year, and I guess that locked me in for all 3 years. So here I am again. I hope you're not tired of me. But we have an excellent panel ahead of us today, largely in thanks to all these wonderful people you see to my left for coming here, joining us, having the courage to share their experiences, stories, ideas. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to our panelists, And I'll invite each and every one of you to just introduce yourself, say hi to the audience, and your connection to the topics of brain injury and housing. Yeah, go for it.
Hi, my name is Wendy Hoban. I survived a ruptured brain aneurysm almost 19 years ago and survived to be here today. It's been tough. Nobody gets it. I look fine, walk fine, talk fine, but not fine in there. But I've learned to cope because that's all we have. There's no magic cure for brain injury. There's zero cure. But these coping skills, which I've learned through the Brain Injury Society here in Victoria, wonderful things, you know. And Leedy, wherever you are, Leedy, my brain injury counselor, she's kept me alive, the song. And become a grandmother, actually. So, yeah. Housing. I'm without housing right now because I chose to help out my ex-husband who was dying and needed caregiving. And in doing that, I kind of left my place. Not bad, just cluttered. Clutter. That's what I got evicted for, clutter. And now I have nowhere to go. I'm staying with him, but there's no prospects out there. I don't know where we're going to go with that. And I've been through a lot of things. Addiction. Yes, addiction. But it's gone now. Thank you. It's hard, though, because impulsivity is the biggest what's that word? It's, thank you. Okay, symptom, yes. It's a top symptom, actually, of brain injury. And I went into the hospital 47. And when I came out of the hospital, I was 17. And a teenager at 47. Wow. Impulsivity, yes. Impulses really ruled my life for a long, long time. And I'm just happy to be alive and here today. Thank you.
Well, we're really happy to have you here, Wendy, and thank you for sharing your story. Move on to Heidi.
Well, good morning. It is so wonderful to be here. I do have to say that most of my days are spent in my home office and going meeting to meetings. So I woke up this morning, I went for a beautiful walk along the breakwater and saw my regular folks, some of who are experiencing homelessness. And we have our usual morning chat. And I just thought of the great opportunity before me to be able to connect with folks and hear firsthand and be a part of making sure there are solutions, that people experiencing homelessness have a housing solution that meets their needs. So Heidi Hartman, I'm Associate Vice President, Supportive Housing and Homelessness at BC Housing. I have the utmost privilege of working across the housing spectrum, all the way from shelters to supportive housing to outreach that support people who are living in encampments to the Women's Transition House program. So I see it when I'm in our shelters. I see brain injury in our Women's Transition House. So just to be a part of this is just so inspirational for me. So thank you for the invite. I'm really glad to be here to learn from you all.
Thank you, Heidi.
Good morning, everyone. Such a great pleasure to be here with all of you. My name is Linda Sankey, and I am the Executive Director at the South Okanagan and Similkameen Brain Injury Society. And our organization came about as a grassroots organization created by 6 families, one of whom in the family had a brain injury, and their caregiver support that got together as these 6 families to find a community amongst themselves in helping their survivor move forward. So that's the grassroots beginning of why I'm here. The organization was founded by those folks with brain injury and their loved ones. And our constitution and bylaws was written by someone with a brain injury. It took him 2 years to write that. And he was so inspirational in his ability to foresee what the needs of people with brain injury really were. He wrote into our constitution that our organization was meant to provide support services, education services, housing, and prevention and education for the public services. So that is the scope of what we've done for the 33 years our organization has been operating. And it has evolved from a very small meeting in someone's living room to quite a bigger organization now. We have FTEs for 25 employees, and we have services doing homeless outreach. We've had 6 different staff working in those programs. We have 7 properties that we're responsible to manage and maintain with approximately 200 tenants living in them. So I have a wing of staff that's responsible for managing and maintaining and upkeeping those buildings, as well as our core programs of brain injury supports and services to folks. And also a lovely public injury prevention education program that we provide to our community, where we support education institutions and others to learn about brain injury. So my experience here today is quite across the broad spectrum of all the topics that are up for research and discussion for today. So thanks for inviting me.
Thank you, Linda. And we'll flip to, yes, round of applause. We'll flip to Connie, who's joining us virtually, if we can get her up on the screen.
Good morning. My name is Connie Paul. I work as the primary care medical manager for the Sinemo Hilit Lelim Health Center. And I oversee the homeless outreach project. I really want to do a shout out for Leila Manson and Lance Point. I understand they're there. They are 2 amazing frontline workers that provide service to the nation in the downtown Nanaimo core and meet the clients where they're at. Our community, when you talk about community, it's about leadership, supporting and addressing the homeless issue. And it's being addressed from more than one kind of an approach. You know, when people talk about homelessness, I go back 46 years when I was homeless. So I might be a nursing manager now, but I've never forgotten the teachings and the lessons and overcoming the issues for the First Nations community. So to me, homelessness was really, in Vancouver, was no culture, no language, no identity, inequity. It was all those challenges around food security, and it's still the same for the clients that are struggling and in the community. So I'm always mindful to remember, that I haven't been homeless in probably over 42 years. So I'm grateful, that I have shelter in my life. I have reconnected to culture and language. So those things I recognize are really important when we're developing programs and services. When it talks about housing can't be in isolation of just the house. Anytime you build anything, it's don't build something for us, but with us. It's really important as a nation. We need to be part of the solution, to our own lived experience of trauma and addictions. I think I really feel happy that we have 12 transitional units right behind our health center. So our people that are going through the transition units of programs, so they have access to doctors and nurses, to mental health, to counselors. So that's one block away. We're 1 block away. So it's a way to bring our people home. And for future, we have Nickel Street coming up, which is a 35 apartments. And so resources are coming from like United Way, the city, own source revenue, our physician services, First Nations Health Authority, Minister of Health. So we bring all the resources and try to mainstream them down to trying to meet the needs of the community. So I look forward to some of the questions. And thank you for asking this to be a part of our own solution. Thank you.
Well, thank you for joining us. My first question is a broad one, and it's very in the spirit of the focus of this project. And maybe I'll ask you, Wendy, first, and we can work our way down. And that question is, how do you think brain injury, mental health, and addictions are connected? And what role does housing play in those connections?
Wow. Can you just say that again?
Yeah,
sorry.
No worries. So how are brain injury, mental health, and addictions connected? The three, how are they connected? And then what role does housing play?
Okay. So a connection, yes. Out of the 4 criteria to be here today were brain injury, addictions, and homelessness. Well, one works with the other one. If we didn't have, if I didn't have the Brain Injury Society in Victoria here, I don't know where I'd be. I think I would not be here today. And I am working with Ian on housing, but there's nothing out there, and I don't know how to. It's hard. It's just really hard to be this me. I look fine, walk fine, talk fine, and people just go, "There's nothing wrong with you. You don't need this." Well, I do. I do. I have lived independently since the injury. Is that ruined my marriage? It put me just in a really bad spot to be stable. And in doing that, obviously had issues with drugs and alcohol, which are gone now. Thank you. And just I don't think we're considered as, you see people on the street are homeless. Like, I have an actual place to stay, but it's not secure, and it's not forever. I need something out there. So I'm just hoping that whatever we gather here today will push that a little farther uphill and help us be not homeless. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. That's our hope, too. Move on to Heidi. How do you think brain injury, mental health, and addictions are connected, and what role does housing play?
Well, they are connected. We hear the stats from the professionals. About 50% of the folks who are experiencing homelessness have brain injury. I worked in nonprofit housing for a lot of years, and now I'm more on the policy end, and really trying to put what I heard, what I saw into practice so that we can learn and do better. BC Housing is really great at building units, but we still got more work to do. But what I would say is that we need more supports to support folks that are in our housing, that are in our shelters. I know the amazing work that the nonprofits do in our housing and in our shelters and in our transition house, but they're still saying we need more clinical supports. And that's where I think the opportunity is. And it's always to build more housing, to make sure that, people who are experiencing homelessness have a choice, and that there's a variety of choices, because, you know, very often we try to cookie cutter housing, and it needs to be very diverse. We need to have different models, and we talk a lot about wraparound services, but I think if we could define that better based on the person so that people are getting their individualized support. So intersection with housing, necessity of housing, absolutely. I've seen the difference housing has made for people that we've supported coming from encampments into housing, whether it's physical, you can often see the physical differences, but also from the stories that they share with me, the mental difference, the stability, the opportunity to embark on that pathway to wellness. And that's really what keeps me going. My husband often says, it's 8 o'clock, you got to stop working tonight. But when you see somebody down the street or walking down your street with a shopping cart, you think, no, I got more to do. And that's why we're all here and just really appreciating the conversation.
Thank you.
I see the intersection between brain injury, mental health, and substance use as an unfortunate continuum. Often the folks that have had services through our organization began their experience with some kind of a brain injury, whether that be traumatic or acquired. And often after someone experiences brain injury, their lives change in a very significant way. And that, at the very least, leads them to feelings that they have to reconcile, which can lead to depression and anxiety at the very least. May or may not have experienced mental health issues before their brain injury. After folks have those first initial problems that they're coping with, the brain injury and the grieving and loss that comes, and the depression, anxiety, and other mental health concerns, then often, those feelings of loss lead to feelings of need to escape from those very heavy feelings. And that leads to substance use. Most of us go home and have a beer or a glass of wine at the end of a hard day, and most of us can regulate what that looks like. But when you've had a brain injury and/or mental health concerns, regulating one's ability to choose when to stop is also sometimes affected by that brain injury. So then folks lead themselves down a path that they don't intend to, which can often sometimes lead to relationship breakdowns, which can also affect financial stability, which can affect your landlord's relationship with you and being able to pay your rent, and then it leads to homelessness. Folks that come to our organization have an ability to be caught anywhere along that path and supported. And because our organization has housing, I can say confidently, housing is one of the most important pieces in supporting people who are experiencing brain injury. In addition to that, I think without the stability of housing, recovery from brain injury is much more complicated. Support services cannot find people if they're living street homeless to provide service. And if they can find them, the ability for the individual to benefit from the service is impacted significantly because they don't have the strength within, maybe that's the wrong word, the mental fatigue that it takes a toll on folks to be able to just go through the activities of surviving through a day are very heavy, and being able to absorb the benefits of the support services that are available is reduced because of how tired being homeless makes everybody. And so those are really important things. And as we're talking about wraparound supports, the first wraparound needs to be a community stepping up and providing housing opportunities. I know within our organization, I mentioned we have properties that we own, but we've also reached out to our larger community and made relationships with landlords, private market landlords in our community, and have promised those landlords that we will support people that they take in that have come from our programming. And whatever that landlord says they need, we are there and we are going to help that landlord. And in helping that landlord, we are helping the person with the brain injury and their family. So the caregivers that are benefiting from also those housing programs are immense. The numbers of people, not just the survivor of the brain injury, but their immediate support circle is also impacted by the core benefit of housing. And so when we're talking about support services that folks need, I always say if you've met a person with a brain injury, you've met one set of needs. Everyone with a brain injury has quite different needs depending on how it's affected them. So those wraparound supports that are needed are very individual. And it's hard to say, well, we just need this or we just need that. And that's how our organization continues to expand all the services that we offer. And my staff often go, oh gosh, please don't promise one more thing. There's so much to do. But those promises are being made because I can see the needs of the individuals that we're supporting, and they need those services. We just need to find funding to make those services available for them.
Thank you, Linda, and thank you for everything your organization is doing in regards to housing. Sounds like you're making a real change, so thank you. We have the same question for Connie, if we can bring her up again. And Connie, I'm wondering, in your opinion, how are brain injury, mental health, and addictions connected? And what role does housing play?
The greater the brain injury, the greater the advocacy is required to support the person that's trying to access housing services. And housing services are limited. So when you're looking at homeless population, we represent 3.4% of the population, but we represent 33% of the homeless. So we're overrepresented. And so you have to look at all the factors, around like upstream thinking about what we can do to look at providing support while on that spectrum. So it really depends on the wellness of the client and how they get identified and how quickly we get them treatment, how quickly we can get them engaged into that self-determination to want to create change in their life and accepting their decision where they're at. So for us as a community, we recognize, I've never forgotten an elder who asked me, where is the salit of my nephew? What he's actually asking culturally is, where is his spirit? So we also have to look at, at the same question from a spiritual lens and not just from a physiological lens. We need to look at it and try to find ways to culturally address brain injury, which is new in our nation. That's a new question. That's a new evolving question that we haven't had to face before. So we're working towards, creating our own solutions to address and try to bring our people home. But when they come home, they're not necessarily the same person that left. When you're looking at children in care, we represent like more than 60% of the children in care. So those children in care, they're going to age out. Where are the supports? So I think it's got to be answered at a much broader umbrella, and try to work with all age groups and community and family and teaching community about brain injury. So, I know we've been trying to work on that in terms from a harm reduction perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Connie. I couldn't agree more. I'm curious, Wendy, something that stands out about your story is that your brain injury was an aneurysm. And I think there's an assumption sometimes that when it's more of a medical brain injury or something like an aneurysm or a stroke, that the system does a better job of taking care of people. And it sounds like that wasn't really your experience. So I'm wondering, in your opinion and from your experience, What do you think the system can do better to support survivors?
Well, I mean, recognition, I guess. I need a place to live, and how do I go about doing that? I've dealt through, well, with Brain Injury Society here, but it's so limited to, like, I lived independently, and I think, people just say, oh yeah, you're fine, let's just, yeah, here you go, right? But it's not really that way, and I don't know, just more housing that's affordable. Really, like, there's all kinds of buildings going up, but I said affordable? What is affordable? I'm living on a pension. So how do I go about finding a decent, safe place to live? I don't know. Just keep putting your name in and wait. But I'm afraid, really, right now, scared. I won't have anywhere to live. That's not good. I can do everything else, but you need to have a place that's safe. And there's a lot of non-safe places in the city, so I don't want to be there. I don't know. Like I said, recognition to say, hey, look, these people need to be safe and secure, and there's not enough out there. So hopefully some of those big condos buildings they're building will be affordable someday. Other than that, I'm just on a wait list. And I have hope and faith that something will happen. I have hope and faith in my life, so I have to do that. So I guess that's good. Thanks.
And hopefully we can make something, just by engaging in these conversations today, we're trying to make something happen. So hopefully that situation improves sooner rather than later. Thank you, Wendy. I'm curious, I'll open this question to any of our panelists, any of our other panelists. What do you think can be done in our current healthcare or social systems to improve how people with brain injury and concurrent mental health addictions concerns are being supported?
Well, I do have to say that after being in housing for over 30 years, I'm very heartened to see the cross-ministry work that's happening, and Minister Whiteside spoke a bit to that. Over probably the last year and a half, we're doing more meetings directly with the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Mental Health and Addictions, to talk about how can we get more supports, those wraparound support services, either into our housing shelters or even through a new program, we were able to get clinical services for rent supplements. So it gives you the opportunity for folks like Wendy to find their own place. And the rent is more affordable because there's a rent supplement that's available. But the bonus to this program is there's clinical or support services attached. So, what heartens me is that cross-ministry work, because BC Housing can build the buildings, but we still need those clinical supports to better support people with their individual support needs. And again, just really focusing, it's not a cookie cutter support, it's based on the person in the unit and what their needs are.
Thank you. We are at our 5-minute mark, and I hope it's all right. We want to try and get at least 1 or 2 questions from the audience and have the opportunity for those questions to be answered. So we'll pull those up now and see some of our top questions from the audience.
Okay, the first question, I'll get you started while we sort out our technology. So a number of people were interested to know, given there are a very limited number of treatment beds on Vancouver Island, could we consider doing research to support the need for more funding for treatment beds?
I'll leave that open to whoever would like to answer it.
I'm not able to answer it, but I think that's a really good question. We'd want to take forward to the Ministry of Mental Health and Addictions. I know all the ministries are doing more work at compiling data and taking a data-driven approach. So I think getting the numbers together and presenting that to the ministry is a really key step for this group to do.
Thank you. And do we have time for one more question from the audience?
Yes, let's just see what it is. Hang on a moment. What is the plan to expand complex care housing? This is desperately needed in many communities. Cowichan, for example, 240 is a good start, but for the entire province, it falls short. Heidi's on the hot seat.
Oh, I can speak to that. Like so many of you, I was just thrilled when the complex care housing program was announced, but you're right, 240 isn't enough. We continue to work on the complex care housing program with the Ministry of Mental Health and Addictions, but I'd also add a new program that we don't hear a lot about, but I'm actually quite excited about, is the Integrated Support Framework. And that's a program that I was mentioning, supported rent supplements, a part of that. So it's giving people the choice to live in the market with making rent more affordable, but still being able to have access to supports. So I feel like there's been some really amazing cross-ministry work being done, and that we're going to do more learning from complex care, putting more supports into existing supportive housing and shelters. So I hope that just emphasizes the commitment by the province to add more supports and housing and learn from this complex care housing model.
Thank you.
Great. I'm just trying to find out how do we change from criminalizing homelessness, i.e. street sweeps, to concentrating on the needs of the individual while being conscious of their human rights?
I'll touch on that one. I think that's partly it's a stigma shift there, and part of that I think has to do also with how we use resources that are available in community now. I think that in some communities, like in mine, we've got a really well-organized group of nonprofit societies along with some levels of government and including BC Housing, working with folks to try and find a continuum of support and care for people. If we have flow through into and out of different types of subsidized housing, we can provide more connections to folks that are experiencing interactions with the police service and probation. I know one of my colleagues is working with the prison in Oliver and is meeting with folks before they get discharged from that correctional center and trying to meet with them so that they're leaving those institutions with a known next step for support. And I think there are opportunities to look at services that are available now and maybe utilize them differently in collaboration with other organizations to look at our resources. What do we have in community? How can we use them differently? Things like complex care kinds of settings are, I think, incredibly important. But sometimes when you think about complex care, or when I used to think about it, I think about a senior's home when people are frail and elderly and have multiple problems. We don't need that for people with brain injury. We need something else. We need something for young folks who are still wanting to live a full life, who are not at the retirement stage. And we really need that now. And we need them in small numbers, in small settings, so that they can be adapted to meet the individual needs of that few number of people that are living in that little setting, but we need lots of them. And there are some settings around our community and around our province that could be adapted, and I'm hoping government will look at those options as well.
Thank you. I'm wondering if Connie, if you have any thoughts you would like to add to either Linda or Heidi's remarks there.
I think for the First Nations population, and recognizing that some of our needs might be a little bit, they're unique to our community. And I really thank the city for stepping up for the supporting us for the 12 transitional units. BC Housing for 35 units on Nickel Street that's coming up. And to try to look at addressing how housing is not just housing, to have counselors, having a part of those housing unit, to have an office built in the housing unit where you'd be able to have a doctor visit, a psychologist visit, social workers visit, mental health workers, addiction workers, working in that out of that housing unit. That's something that we would like to see, to try to provide that what we call blanket wraparound care. The other piece that I think is really important for the First Nation communities is that there are some addiction issues in very small, isolated communities. So we need to create a place because we want our people to come home. We don't want them to go to the city to get care. We want them to come home to get that care. So how does that look when we're federal responsibility and a lot of the funding is provincial? So it's that jurisdictional, historically provincial funding wasn't available to First Nations on reserve. And I think there's a shift to try to allowing us to access some of that funding. And that's very recent. So that is actually a success. I think Sheila Malcolmson coming out to our community and meeting with us and saying, what are the needs of the First Nations population? So it's some of those key people that are making decisions in the province are actually working with our senior First Nation leadership and governance. So I'm hopeful. I see a lot of promises on the table, and I'm glad that we're a part of the solution in terms of how we want to see services developed in our community that meet our community needs.
Thank you, Connie, and thank you to everyone in the audience for submitting these questions. We don't have time to answer them all, but we do keep track of them, and it's important for us as researchers to have these questions at our hands. So thank you for that. I want to invite maybe Wendy, since some of these questions were directed to the other folks on the panel. I just have a broad question that maybe we can end with today, and that is, what's the one thing you want people to take away from your story? What's the one message you could leave us all with today?
Well, just seeing all these people here and all the people that are working for us, it's wow. Because I've only had such a tiny spot to look for housing. And I hope everybody here that says they're going to do what they're going to do will do it. I trust they will. I do. Or I wouldn't be here. Or we wouldn't be here. Yeah. I don't know. Just like see us as we're needy, and sure, I get my government check every month, but it doesn't make it housing come around, Well, I just want to thank everybody that's here for doing this. And you, Cole, thank you. Okay, I hope that's okay.
Thank you. And let's get a round of applause for our panelists. Thank you so much to all of you for being here. It means the world to us. And thank you to Connie online. We have some small gifts for you that we'll present, but thank you again so much for your strength and your courage and your openness to share with us today. Thank you.